Very good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to Hometown 101.9 FM, AM 1220 WZOT. Brian here with you from the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission. We have some special guests in the studio with us, and we have Lindsay. Good afternoon, Lindsay. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Doing well. Thank you for having us today.
And we also have Joe. I'll let you do the last name.
Yeah, Joe Gavalis, the law enforcement coordinator for the North Georgia Elder Abuse Task Force.
We have some very important information that we're going to be passing along to everybody out there today. And Joe, what are just some of the scams going on right now that are specifically targeting the elderly out there?
Well, let me tell you, with the scams and elder abuse, we look at it in the task force. Three basic ones. We can break it down farther, but we have physical abuse for abuse situations. Physical abuse, which I think a lot of people basically recognize, bruises, things like that. But financial abuse, which is 70% of all abuse for seniors and elderly, are financial abuse. Unfortunately, most of that abuse is by relatives, loved ones, or people that are caretakers. Third is institutional abuse, which deals with nursing homes, personal care homes, and assisted living. So we look at that. The point we like to get across is this is not a big city problem. This is a total problem across the United States, especially in the rural, non-big metropolitan areas. There are matters that we can talk about. We'll give some examples of the type of frauds that we see, which are predominant in this part of the country, in this part of the state, but basically in the country. We were just talking to some officers from Floyd County, and we have had a scam that was perpetrated in, the first one we heard of was up in Walker County, Catoosa, what's another?
Floyd and Walker.
Well, Floyd, but also Whitfield County, but
Okay.
I mean the counties,
Yep.
but it crossed over into Tennessee and Alabama, and that just shows you crime knows no boundaries.
No.
You know, they don't care that, oh, I'm not in Floyd County, that doesn't matter to a criminal, nor does it matter to them what state they're in. So we kind of bring everybody together to try to address the issue. But this was a scam that the first time we heard about it was from Walker County, and they had roughly 30 victims who were victimized by an individual who was coming around selling these sheds for the backyard. You've seen them on ads all over, and you're driving down the road. The primary victims were elderly people, and they'd be in the rural area. They weren't in the cities. They were like maybe a small residential area who need a shed. Nothing wrong with it. He would go around, sign them up, and would basically take whatever he could in a down payment, and you'd never see him again.
Oh, wow.
So they arrested him. It was roughly, I think, 30 victims and about $133,000 of loss, where not a shed was delivered, nothing was done, but the elderly people were taken. And now why are elderly people being targeted? Because people of that generation are very trustworthy, number one. Number two, they've usually been able to accumulate a little cash, sometimes hidden in their house, sometimes just squirreled away somewhere in some bank account or something like that. And they're very loving people of their relatives, their sons, their daughters, grandsons, granddaughters. In this case, they would go to somebody in a rural area. They would pay up if they had $1,000. They would do it, or if they wanted to give them $1,000 in cash or write a check. They didn't take that many checks, so nothing happened. So when you put them all together, it paints a nice picture. It happened in Alabama, it happened in Tennessee, and it happened in many counties here. We're at a law enforcement meeting, and the representatives from Floyd County said, we have the same type scam in Floyd County, headed farther south, Polk County, Floyd County, over in Alabama, and they had like 75 or 80 victims for over $200,000 on the same scam.
My goodness.
On the sheds, and people know they can get away with it. Because most elderly people, they don't want to sue because they don't want to spend the extra money for a lawyer.
Yeah.
And a lot of them just say, we learned, like Martha, we learned. We're not going to do it again. You know how it is, how it goes. So that just shows you, and that was just, it was new to everybody on the task force. We never heard of it. And there it is, 2 different groups, 2 different people, local people in that case. It's kind of sad. I mean, people are out. A lot of them, they're, substantial part of their life savings.
And I do news here, and it's all over the news about scams. New scams that are always coming up about people trying to get money out of people. Phone scams, we got that, and even people show up at people's doors.
Oh, it's what we tell them when we speak to the seniors. One, we recommend if you have a cell phone or you still have some of the old phones that some of them show the caller ID. If you don't know who it is, don't answer it. Believe me, I know a lot of people like to talk and think they can out-talk these people, but when you get these scammers, they're professionals. They're not farmers, they're not plumbers, they're not office workers. They're thieves, they're scammers. And so if they can get you talking, it's to their advantage, not to yours. So we tell them don't speak. If you don't recognize the number, and if they don't leave a message, no harm, no foul, as they say in sports, right?
Yeah, and I just had one this morning. I was saying about it a little bit earlier.
Right.
It was from out of Texas. So, and I didn't recognize the number or didn't have a name on it, just Houston, where it was calling from. So usually those, I just let it go to voicemail or let them hang up.
Right, and again, and a lot of the scams are coming through. Well, we start off every meeting of this, right, Lindsay?
Yes.
If you didn't play the Jamaican lottery or you didn't play the Irish lottery, you can't win it. Somebody calls you won. If you never played it, you can't win it. And number 2, if your lineage is not from a prince in Sweden or in Nigeria, you're not inheriting any money from those people.
No.
But, and unfortunately, people are gullible. I mean, it is, as we go around and try to, deal with law enforcement and hear about some of these cases and adult protective services that deal with it, or healthcare facility regulators out of Atlanta, it's just sad how some of the people are scammed. I will tell you a new scam that we just heard about. Weren't there, but it was in another counties in north central Georgia. A gentleman, retired military gentleman, in his 70s, I think, just lost over $200,000.
Oh, wow.
And the scam was fortune teller. A fortune teller, he, on the internet, came up and convinced them to keep sending money, and she would send them different things like trinkets and things. And and finally that dawns on them that this is nothing, and it's a shame. The big scam that we're looking at is right now romance scams. And I can go into that. If you want me to go into that, or you got
okay.
it.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Romance scams are very interesting. They're usually a lot of seniors, a lot of elderly people are lonely, and they get on the internet. And either it's a Facebook or just some of the websites. And, after a while, they meet the perfect person. I'll give you a story, and I know Lindsay's heard it, but it just shows you the intricacies of these fraud scams. A woman in rural Georgia, north of Atlanta, in a rural county, she was an accountant, retired, had a good retirement, good money, just was on the internet, and a gentleman, I believe, got a hold of her Facebook. Somehow it was open. She didn't close it. And they got talking and became friends. There were so many things they had in common, because she would write, and back never saw the person. And he was living in Birmingham. She lived in Atlanta, north of Atlanta, Birmingham. Well, they could see each other. And looking back at it now, she says, every time I was going to go to Birmingham, he was out of town. And when I invited him over here, his trip canceled. So I never did meet him. But after a month or two, they kept having a conversation. She said, it started off that his business was kind of low on cash, and his accounts receivable were due, and he didn't have it, and he needed to get $500. And we were like friends. I mean, we had all this in common. So I sent him $500. So I wired it, Western Union or whatever it was, wired it to him in Birmingham. Well, long story short, over $50,000 later, she finally realized that she never was going to see him. She never met the man, never knew what it was. So the government took one of the transactions and followed it. And the transaction goes roughly like this: from Metro Atlanta to Birmingham to John Smith. Well, they're hoping to get an idea who's John Smith. Well, the directions were John Smith gave orders to direct a money order being sent from Birmingham to Toronto, Canada. The Canadian officials looked at it, and when it got to Canada, it was directed to be sent to Amsterdam. When it got to Amsterdam, the Interpol looked at it. It got sent to Nigeria. The money never went to Birmingham, never was used here. It just was this giant circle. And, she said she felt like a fool. But, she was conned like everybody else. It's a romance scam.
And how can we recognize different types of scams and try to avoid them to let people know about that?
I think initially is don't answer the phone of something that you don't know.
Okay.
2, don't believe a picture. We have a case ongoing now. One of the enforcement agencies have a case going on where this woman is made friends with a major, I think, in the Army who's fighting in Afghanistan and wanted help and helping him and asked to do, this gentleman asked to do a few things, nothing involving money. And then all of a sudden, he said, we're a little light. Could you kind of help me here? And I think this one, they were like $75,000 out of pocket. And the picture that was sent is not, there is no such, that guy is not the major. He's some actor that's in some advertising up in the Northeast. It's not him. They just used this picture off the internet. So, try to check these out. And if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
It probably is.
Probably almost all the way. So I think on the phone scams, the big scams now on the phones, and they're kind of ongoing, is the IRS scam, where allegedly IRS says you owe money, and if you don't pay, we're going to come and arrest you. I'm a retired federal agent. I worked organized crime and labor racketeering for close to 30 years. We would never call anybody, and our guests, when we have our guests from local and state, they don't call you to arrest you. They just come and arrest you. There's no call, oh, by the way, because what's going to happen? You probably wouldn't be there if you're going to come get arrested.
Yeah.
So the IRS is not going to come arrest you. And if you miss jury duty and you didn't know you were supposed to be in jury duty, you call the sheriff. You call the courthouse. Not the number that they give you. You go to the phone book and you go and call them, or go down to the courthouse. Go talk to them, because if you don't think you missed it, you probably didn't. Yeah. But they are so bold as they ask them to pay, and I've seen from $500 to $5,000, because nobody wants to go to jail. You're in violation of state law, and if you don't pay this money up. A lot of them ask for, not a lot, some ask for cash, which is unusual. A lot of them ask for things called the Green Dot card, an iTunes card, or there's another one they use. But whatever it is, these are cards you can buy at like Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, and you get them at different denominations. One that is recently that they just did a case on, they wanted $5,000, and they were very specific to buy two $2,000 Green Dot cards and one $1,000, I think it was an iTunes card. They kind of mixed it. Nobody understands why. Because on the back of these cards, it's like you just gave money to somebody to buy the cards, And now that card, once it's been properly charged, they call it, at the grocery store, at Walmart, whatever it is. Now that card's like having a $2,000 cash. And so what these people ask you to do is go get a green card, whether it's 500, 2,000, whatever it is, and scratch off the number in the back and give it to us. Well, as soon as you give it to them, that money's gone. And that's the scam. So I don't know about you, but in my life, I don't know how many people ask me to pay by a Green Dot card or pay by an iTunes card. They're going to say cash, check, or credit card. And so that should be a clue. If you have that, don't do it.
And usually the IRS wouldn't ask you to pay that way either. So
and they'll communicate by probably certified letter and get it that way. One of the bigger scams that actually took place is the grandparent scam. And I want everybody to be aware of it because it's happening here. And remember I said, why are elderly, why are they targeted? They're targeted because they love their kids and love their grandkids and nieces and nephews. This was an actual case that took place dealing with Atlanta, but a phone call was made to a woman, 84-year-old woman, in Salem, Oregon, outside of Salem.
Okay.
And the gentleman made the call and said, Mrs. Smith, or whatever her name was, your grandson, and they paused. And, of course, grandson, she says, Jeff? Says, your grandson, Jeff. So the guy didn't know who the grandson was, but now he knew it was Jeff, has been arrested in Atlanta, Georgia. This is Drug Enforcement Agent David Smith.
Yep.
Said, he's in a lot of trouble, and he asked me to call you because he didn't want to bother his mother, but that his grandmother would help him, and he needs $9,000 to get out on bond, to get out of jail. We're holding him here. And if you want it done quickly, because he doesn't want to stay in jail, here's what you need to do. You need to go to the bank, get $9,000 in cash. Take the $9,000 in cash, put it in a magazine, put the magazine in a FedEx box, and send it to this address to SA, which would stand for Special Agent, which this guy wasn't, Michael Jones, at such and such address. Well, the address was a hotel. Of course, the woman didn't know it. So they got $9,000. And you got to remember you're dealing with professionals. Professionals, they basically have 3 lists. And so when we advise you not to talk to them, that's a list because they're not going to waste their time. They're sitting in like a room with maybe 50 or 100 people, and they're letting either the computer dial or they're dialing. And, so if you don't answer, you're off the list.
And they just go to the next one.
The next one. But if you think you can outsmart them, and some people like to play games, you're on a second list because they think they are better than you, that when they have some downtime, they can go back, and if you're willing to talk to them, they have a shot because all they got to do is hit once out of 100, and they're making money. And then the third one is it's like fishing, and that's what they call it, not with an F-I-S-H, but a P-H-I-S-H, and fishing. And with this woman, they caught her. She sent the $9,000. So like any good fisherman, you're going to go back to the same hole where you've caught the fish.
Yep.
They call her 3 days later or 2 days later and said, we got your money, but there are more drugs that Jeff has.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to need another $9,000. Same routine. She goes to the bank, puts the cash. Now this is cash. This is what's instructed to do. 84-year-old woman, cash in a magazine in a FedEx box, sends it to Atlanta. Well, now they have $18,000. So like a day or two passes, and they call her back. They figure let's see what we catch a whale here because of fish. They said, we talked to the judge. The car that Jeff was driving had hidden compartments with more drugs, and we need $15,000. And the woman goes, oh, my God, I don't have any money. I have to get it. Said, well, if you want Jeff out of jail, you're going to go get the money. She said, okay, well, let me go. I have to sell some bonds and things like that. So she gets off the phone, and then there's a knock on the door. This is in Salem, Oregon. Who do you all think it's there? It's Jeff. She says, Jeff, what are you doing here in Salem, Oregon? I said, what do you mean? She said, you're supposed to be in jail in Atlanta. He said, I've never been to Atlanta. I've never been to Georgia. She said, so Jeff got a hold of the sheriff that got a hold of the Atlanta police. So long story short, they found out there were like 4 or 5 other states, people in other states that did it, Minnesota, Ohio, shipping it to Atlanta, and all they had was a courier picking up the money. And why did they do it? Because the woman gave up her grandson's name, never checked to see if he was in jail. All you had to do is call. And then again, that she wanted him out. And and when they talked to her, she said, well, I know that I was really flattered that he would come to me instead of his mother because he didn't want to bother his mother. So you know how they prey on each other.
And how can I reduce my risk of identity theft? 'Cause that's a popular thing going on. Where people steal other people's identity and from.
Well, first of all, what we tell everybody is freeze your credit. That stops it right there. And certainly elderly people, or older, when I say elderly, older, but anybody, usually you're pretty set, you have your home, you have whatever. You don't need another credit card. You don't need to set up something, at XYZ because you want another credit card. They're frozen. So you can freeze it, and you just call and file with the credit agencies, and then you can unfreeze it if you need it.
Okay.
So do that. And then you got to remember, people ask us at the meetings, why me? How did they get my information? Well, unfortunately, of all the good the web has done, there's also the dark side of the web.
Yes.
And they sell it. They sell people's names and numbers and IDs. And they say, well, how did they get it? Well, you say, have you been in the last 5 years? Have you signed up at one of the grocery stores for a contest of a trip to the Bahamas? Have you signed up when you go to a store and you list all your... They sell that. That's an asset to them. And they sell it to a broker who then sells it to them. So it's nothing necessarily you did, but they have it, and that's why they'll call you or they'll write you, and you just got to be careful. You have to check. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
I know one time I was paying a bill online, and different businesses do that now. You pay it online, and I noticed there was a purchase on there that I never even made, and it was like from somewhere in like Russia or something.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what in the world is that? And it was like for a very small amount, so it's kind of like where you wouldn't even notice it if you didn't look through it. And it's like,
well, I just want to go because I know we're running short in time. There is a book that's published by the Georgia Department of Law Consumer Protection Unit, and it deals with consumer protection guide for older adults, and it lists a lot of the scams, things you should do and shouldn't do. Okay. It's a good book to get. You can contact them or...
You can also contact us at the Area Agency on Aging. We have these books on hand. We like to get these out into the community anywhere we can. The phone number to contact us is 1-800-759-2963. And also, we like to schedule meetings where we can, get this information out, because it's important to do the community education so that people are aware of what's happening in your town. And again, to do that, we will do it at civic groups, faith-based organizations, basically anywhere that there's people meeting. And again, you can reach us at 1-800-759-2963.
And get it, and we're gonna leave some here at the station.
Yeah,
yes.
we'll have some laying on the counter for people to come by and pick up. And
that'll be good.
We'll have these for them. Yep. And has there been any legislation passed?
Oh, well, as I said, it's a pleasure here, but these topics, we all could go, each one is a topic.
Yeah.
The state of Georgia is blessed in that we have legislators that really take this to heart and really try to give the tools to the state agencies to fight elder abuse. We are considered one of the primary states that have the best laws, the primary, meaning the fight against elder abuse. Obviously, like everything else, our state agencies are understaffed, undermanned like everybody else. And that's why we form these task force where we work together and people exchange information because of the no county, no city boundaries, no state boundaries. We've had legislation that that deals with power of attorney, and I think if any of any of our audience out there, they know people have power of attorney. Things that you got to remember: if you issue a power of attorney, you can rescind it at any time.
Okay.
A lot of times, you'll give it to one of your children, and it's like they feel they have it forever. They don't. You can rescind it.
Okay.
We have legislation on exploitation of seniors. We've made it a major crime, and they're used all over. I know the district attorney in Floyd County is very aggressive using this under if you heard it, the RICO statute,
Yes.
where they where these people get substantial time, and you're going to have a seizure of assets, where they've used the disguise of legitimate business to illegally obtain funds and assets. The state passed a law making it illegal for people to traffic in basically humans. You heard about sex trafficking for youngsters. Well, there's trafficking out there going on, getting seniors, people down in their luck, bringing them in, having them sign up for programs or getting their Social Security check, and allegedly taking care of them, but just taking their money.
And we've actually had that in the news. So all that is recent. And
Absolutely.
It is.
And it's still going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other big issue in the state that we're looking at it, we didn't get into institutional issues, is unlicensed personal care homes. And these are homes that are regulated by the state, and if they're not licensed, usually, and not in all cases, but usually they don't have all the safeguards that the state mandates for our seniors. And some of the conditions I've seen where some of the people are living, it's outrageous. They'll do a nice showroom or a show house, and then they'll move them, and they're in like 3 or 4 people next to one another, feed them bologna sandwiches or peanut butter sandwiches, and they're just taking their money. I mean, that's just it's just some of the things that they say. Horrible living conditions in the bathrooms. So if you see things, which I want to get out, make sure that with the point we get out, there's not enough law enforcement or regulatory people to be out there every day looking at this. Every one of us knows, I would bet, somebody, either in our family or some relative or some friend who has a friend where there's been some kind of abuse for an elderly relative or an elderly friend. If you see this or feel that it's of concern, it bothers you, please call 911 and get your local police. I know here in Polk County, the chief and the assistant chief are very concerned. We'll work very much on this. Same thing in Floyd County. You're blessed here that law enforcement takes this seriously. It's a big effort. And so we ask you to please cooperate. Doesn't mean you're going to have to go testify. It just means you might help that senior up here that's sitting there alone that needs some help. And
they need to let people know about it. But people have a chance to go to a meeting tomorrow where you're going to be speaking at. Joe's going to be speaking at the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission meeting in Calhoun.
It is in Calhoun. It's the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission's board meeting. Joe will be speaking on some of the things that we're doing there. That meeting starts at 11 in Calhoun.
Okay. And if they want to get in touch with you for directions, they can call your office there in Rome to find out more information about all the things going on.
Yes, that is correct. And we offer a lot of services besides the elder abuse presentations we do. So if you have somebody that's in need, please contact us because we have resources and services that we can get out to them as well.
And their website that you can go to is www.nwgrc.org.
Yep.
And 706-295-6485 is the phone number that they can reach. And we will have these books here at our station, here at 602 West Elm Street in Rockmart, for people to come by and pick up. And they can always get in touch with you if they have any more questions or more information. Right. And also, like you were saying, they can get in touch with 911 if they see anything like this going on.
Please do. The cooperation. And then the state also has regulatory people that it might not be criminal, but it might be other issues, and that's Adult Protective Services and healthcare facilities regulators, and those numbers are on the computer, or you can just get it from your law enforcement agency. They'll direct you to the professionals.
Well, we appreciate having you here, Joe and Lindsay, and we also had Marco y'all are welcome to come back anytime.
Well,
we'll discuss.
we hope to, and what we'd like to do is come back at least monthly to give you all, and for a better thing, the fraud of the month.
Okay.
Because they're
that'll work.
changing every day. You know,
Yeah.
when the government comes up how to stop it, they devise a new way or a new scam.
They have a new one, so we'll be doing that, and we'll let everybody know when y'all be coming back on here.
Great.
With the ZOT. But
We
thank
thank
y'all for
you.
being
We
here.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much.
Take care.
And you are listening to Hometown at 101.9 FM, AM 1220 WZOT. Have a great afternoon, everybody.